In the previous lesson, we saw how we can create different layers by cutting the background from an image. And so how we can create photo montages, and also how we can distribute and align the various objects that we created in our composition. So in this video, we're going to focus more on the layers here in GIMP. So I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to go to File, New, and just gonna use this time not a print format, but I'm gonna use a more like a screen format. So this is Full HD 1920 times 1080. Okay, and I'm just gonna close this. Now I want to start with a background image. So I just look for some background image in Google with the Creative Commons license, and I found this nice background image from raw pixel, and it's public domain, so you can use it, and it doesn't matter the size because we're just going to do examples, so you don't need like the full resolution. So this is the image I'm going to use as a background, and then I've chosen this image right here. I searched for a rear view, and I found this image right here from Wikimedia Commons. So again, this is the image. You can get it in many different sizes. Doesn't matter how big it is. Well, don't download it too small, and you find all the other information right here. So I want to use this other image because I want to create some blending. So I want to mix this background with this foreground image. I want to show you how you can work with blending layers, which is another really interesting feature using layers. So let's get back here, and I'm gonna go to File, and this time I want to go into Open as Layer. So I don't want to open directly the image, but I'm gonna start to use layers, clicking here. So once you do this and you select an asset like this, you can see this is not big enough to cover my whole screen. So let's see what's gonna happen if I open this. I'm just gonna convert, and there you go. So you can see that this image is not big enough to cover everything. So I need to scale this. I need to resize this to fit the entire screen, and so that I can see it better. Now, to do this, we already saw that we can use the transform. So if I use the Unify Transform tool or Shift T, I can click on the image and then I can scale it. Now you can use these handles on the sides and scale it. So you're just gonna go here and just make it match to the border. Remember that you have snapping. We talk about snapping. This is the origin if you need to move it. And then you have these boxes around. So if you click on the larger box, well, be careful where you click, because if you click here, it's gonna rotate. And if you click on this other one, it's going to distort the image, so creating some sort of perspective. We used this in the previous lesson. And if you click on the larger square, it's going to scale. So be careful again what you are visualizing there as an icon, because this is unified. It means that you can move, rotate, and scale depending on where you click. And then you have this other, which can distort the image, but we don't want to distort it. So you can just click and drag and choose which part of the image you want to see. And also, really important here, when you transform, you have the image opacity. So in the moment you transform, you can change the opacity to understand better where your image is going to go. So you can see here, I'm framing the middle part. But if I move it, you can see that I can place the bottom part, which is probably more interesting, or I can like push it down. Or be careful not to push it too high, because this is going to be then an empty space. Then when you finish, you click on transform, and there you go. This is going to come back with the original opacity. It's not transparent anymore. So you need the image opacity right here only when you're placing the image and you want to know where your background is. In this case, you can see it's a black background. Okay, so this is one way you can do it. Let me just go back, Control Z. There you go. And let's go into the layer menu now. So you have many different commands here, which I'm gonna talk about later. Some of these we already saw in the previous videos. You have a stacking order, stacking commands. You can create masks. We're gonna see what masks are later. You can work with transparency, adding alpha channels or removing alpha channels or doing other things with alpha channels. And then you can transform. Now, transform here means that you are transforming the layer, so the content of this layer, which is limited by this dashed line. So these are the borders of the layer. So everything that is inside there is the content of the layer. And so when you do this, when you flip vertical or horizontally or rotate, you are not rotating the entire composition, the entire image, but you're rotating just the layer. So if you go instead here in the image and you go transform and you flip or rotate, you are flipping or rotating everything, which means the entire image, the entire composition, the entire project. So there is a difference between working with layers and working with the entire composition. So all of these are for layers. Now, if we get down here, we have another set of options. Among these, we have layer to image size. So you can see now the layer has become as big as the image. But if I turn off this background, this black background, you can see that this is all a transparent part. So it's not really used by this layer. So it's like we are extending the perimeter, but the content is still there. And this is not great when you need to work with alignment. So if you work with alignment and you select this, you can see that it's going to take the yellow line as reference. So it's not so handy. Let's just go back here in the layers. And now let's do crop to content. So you can see now the layer is cropped to match the actual pixels in this layer right here. And this is better when you do align or other operations because you can see that it's closer. Well, it's actually perfectly there on the border of the image. So this is something that you want to consider to use the image or to use the layer boundary. So you have you can also change here um, the scaling of the layer. So let's scale the layer. So let's say that I want to fill the composition with this background layer, just as we did with the transform tool earlier. So I'm gonna type 1920 because I know this is the actual size of the overall composition. Now the height will try to match the proportions. So if you unlink this, you can also fit this perfectly into the full HD format, which is going to be 1080, but it's going to be deformed. So you probably don't want to do that. So let's reset. Let's type 1920 and I'm going to leave this. So let's scale. And now you can see we are perfectly fill everything there in the background. So if I move now, this again, I can choose if I want to use the bottom part or the top part or the middle. So I'm still be able to move around with my image, and I have some like extra pixels that I can use at the bottom or at the top. So I want to use this bottom part because it's more interesting. Now all these extra pixels there are still visible because you can see the dashed line. It's more than the actual size here of the composition. So again, if I go to layer, I can see layer to image size. So you can see now that the yellow line is matching the composition size. So these are all similar operation, but they all do different things, and you may want to know what they do. And so once you understand the difference between layer to image, you can get accustomed to this. So layer to image size is scaling the layer to the image size. Layer boundary size is about just the boundary, the yellow line. Scale layers is to scale just the layer and not the image. Crop to content is to limit the dashed line to the actual content of the layer. Now let's see some other operations with the layers menu. One thing we already know is we can create new layers by holding Shift-Control-L. We did this with the floating selection in another video, but you can also create a new layer from zero. So the layer name will be, let's say, new layer or new background. So let's create like a white background, and you can use a color tag or none. So let's use also a color tag. So I'm gonna select this one here. And then you have already the blending mode, but we're gonna see this later. And you have two types of blending mode. You have default blending modes and legacy blending modes, which are pretty similar to Photoshop. But as we know, GIMP is the alternative to Photoshop. It's the open source alternative. And then we can choose the composite space, RGB, composite mode. Well, you don't need to know all of this at the beginning. Just leave auto. Then you can already set the opacity, and again, the width, the height, which is going to match the original image. And then we can also offset, so you can move it a little bit on the X, on the epsilon, and we can fill it with the foreground color, which is at the moment this one here, or the background color, which is at the moment the black, or the white, or a transparency, which means we will not have any pixel. It's going to be transparent, totally transparent. And then you have pattern, but we're going to see pattern later. So let's say that we want this white. And let's say OK. Now you also have some switches here. You can turn the switches also later on, but briefly, this is to make the layer visible. This is if you want to link this layer to another layer. And this is if you want to lock the pixels, which means you will not be able to brush, paint, or anything onto that layer. This is going to lock the position and size, so you won't be able to resize it, transform it, move, rotate, scale, whatever. And this is to lock the alpha, so you won't be able to transform any of the pixels into transparent pixels. So you can turn this all on, but let's now just focus on the main stuff. So I'm just going to leave the first one on and say OK. So you can see now I have a new background right there. So I'm just going to click and drag because this is going to be a new background. So I want to click it and drag it down here. And since it's going to go there, it's not going to be visible anymore because it's going to be overwritten by this other background here. So this is just to show you how you can create a new layer. You can see now it has this purple tag, which is a color that you can assign to different layers if you want to like categorize them. So you want to create a different layer for different purposes. You can differentiate them by using colors. Now you can also delete a layer. So if I select this, go here, layer, you can delete. Okay, now before we go into the other options here, I want to insert the other image. So let's go to File, and again, open as layers, and let's go to this other image, open, and convert. Okay, now you can see that this image is way bigger than our actual screen size. So we need to do another thing. So in the first scenario, we had a smaller image and we scale it up. And GIMP just like created extra pixels that weren't there. So it did the interpolation. Here, we can scale down so we won't lose any quality. So I'm just gonna transform. So again, if I want, I can use the unified transform. I cannot see the limits, so I need to zoom out a little bit so you can see the dashed line is there. So again, I can use the unified transform. Now, be careful because when you transform here, you also have some options. So you either work on the layer again, or on the selection, or on the path, or on the image. So be careful what you're scaling. If you use the image as a scaling measure, you can see it will scale using the image. But we need to scale the whole layer. So I'm going to select layer, I'm going to click, and the moment I click, I can see now the image opacity. And you can see why it's important, because now I can see the actual image and the screen where I want to bring that. So I'm just going to click on this real quick, and I'm going to choose the part that I want to see. So I'm just going to move it into position. So let's say that I want to see this part of the image. Okay. Again, using the snaps, you can be really precise. So that's fine for me. So I'm going to transform, wait for the transformation, and that's it. Now, how can I create an opacity or transparency effect with this image on top? You can see it's right here on top. I can use the opacity right here. So if I click this and drag it down, I now have a blending between the two, a fading of the two or the other one. And I can create really beautiful mashups. You can also move the image by pressing the move tool and the arrow keys. So the arrow keys will help you to define like a more precise positioning for your image. So press the arrow keys on your keyboard to move it slightly. Okay, and now let's continue here. Let's go with other commands. So we can also create a new layer group. When you create a layer group, you can click and drag inside this layer group the other layers. There you go. Be careful because it's really important the stacking order. So if you place this on top, you're gonna have something. If you place it on the bottom, you're gonna have something else. Now, when you place everything under one layer group, you can click and drag, and that's gonna bring everything with him. So this is why it's handy. Or you can turn it off, and it's gonna turn off everything. Now, another option is that you can link these two together. So let me just go back before the layer group. There you go. So we have these two. So if I move this one here, you can see it's only moving this one here. But if I link these two together, I'm gonna move them together, which is probably better because they work as a single image, as a single entity. Now, let's just deactivate this and continue. Then we can duplicate the layer, Shift Control D. So this is going to create another layer on top of the other with the same characteristics of the other one. So we can again change the opacity here. Now let's delete it. I can also delete it down here. And again, let's see here, we have then merge down. Merge down will merge the first layer visible and the layer below it. So now we only have two, so it's going to merge this one here with this one here. So merge down, and now we have only one image out of the two different ones that we have before. So Control Z again, and let's continue. And now we have this layer. Now we do have a stacking order, so we can select the bottom layer, we can select the previous layer, the top layer, the bottom layer, the next layer. So we can just select them. Or we can also change the stacking order. So we can put it down like that, put it below, or again, raise the layer or layer to the top or layer to the bottom. So this is handy when you have like a lot of layers to work with. And you can also reverse the layer order, but you can see there is a totally different result. Okay, then you have masks, and we can add a layer mask. And you can work with the mask in different ways. You can work with white. So a white mask will be full opacity. A black mask will be full transparency. We can use the layers alpha channel if it has one, but it doesn't right now. We can transfer the layers alpha channel, so we can get it from the alpha channel and bring it to the mask. We can use a selection. We can use a grayscale copy of the layer, so it's going to generate a grayscale copy of that image. Or we can use a channel if we have it, but right now we don't have any channel to use. So let's start with something really simple, which is going to be the full opacity mask. So if I add this, nothing will happen because everything is completely opaque. Now, by the way, you can see this has turned green. So when you select the image here on the layer, it's gonna turn yellow. When you select the mask, it's gonna turn green. And also we want to make this to crop the content. So let me just, well, not crop the content, sorry, but layer to image size. Okay. So how do we use the mask? We need to make sure we are selecting this mask here on the layer, and then we need to use some colors. The easiest way to do it is to use the paintbrush tool. So if we paint with the black, we're going to delete part of the image. So if I click and drag, okay, you may not see it right now, but we are deleting part of the image. So if I turn off the other images, you can see here that I'm deleting. Let's turn this to full opacity. So you can see whatever I paint on the mask will get rid of the background. So this is another way you can also create some cutout, by the way, similar to the ones that we saw in the other video. In the other video, we use selection. Once you delete the part that you selected, it's gonna go. You cannot retrieve it. When you use the mask, you can retrieve it, but you need to invert the brush color. So you need to have a white color to retrieve it like that. So this is why masks usually are preferred to other methods when you need to get rid of part of the image and make it transparent, because you can always go back. It's a reversible operation as long as you have the mask right here. The other way, if we just, to delete the mask, we can select here and go to layer, mask, delete, layer mask. So now we don't have the mask anymore. So let's add another one, layer, mask, add layer mask, black, full transparency. So now I cannot see anything, but if I start to paint, not with the black, but with the white, I will be able to see and reveal the layer that's underneath. So masks are really handy. It can stay there as long as we need them. So you can also go here to layer and again mask. You can also show the layer mask to see what it's about. And we can also disable the layer mask. And let's also go here and go to layer mask and don't show the layer mask. So right now the mask is disabled, but it's still there. You can see it turned red, but it's still there. So anytime I want to use it, I can go back to the mask menu and check this off. There you go. So now I can see it. If I want to lock the mask, I can do it like this. So this will like stay there. It's kind of locked. We can lock the alpha channel instead with this one here. So to see the alpha channel, we can just, instead of painting with the mask, we can paint directly on the layer, but using the eraser. So when I use the eraser and I see the background like that with the checkerboard, it means it has an alpha channel. Otherwise, right click and add the alpha channel. You can see this one has it, so I can just remove it. But I don't want to do this right now. I want to lock the alpha channel. So you can see that now I'm not able to create any more transparent part because I blocked the alpha channel, which is the transparency layer. Now you can also use gray, so not only black and white, you can also use mild gray or strong gray, and those will be like something in between transparency and opacity. And this one here will lock the movement. So sorry, if I use the move tool, you can see I will not be able to move it. And this one here will lock the brush. So if I use the brush, I cannot use it because the brush and the pixels are locked. So I cannot change the color of the pixels of the image. Okay, now let's go here in the layer panel, which is of course really important when you need to work with layers. So the first thing here on the top is the mode or the blending mode. Now, the opacity is kind of the easiest mix that you can do, the easiest blending mode, but you also have others. So if you click here, you have this really long list of blending modes. So my suggestion, what I do is I click here once and then I start to press my arrows in the keyboard. So if you press the down arrow, you will see then all the different blending modes. So you can decide which one you like the most. Now all of these have different effects. Some of these will show you the darker areas. Some of these will show you the brightest areas. Some of these will invert everything. So you have really so many different outcomes when you use the blending layers. So let's say that I like this one here, which is called LCH Linus. I can also do the other thing. I can use this one here to create a blending layer. So I'm gonna right click and let's duplicate this right here. And by the way, you can also use these buttons at the bottom. So if you want to create a new layer, you can click on this. If you want to create a new layer group, you can click this. If you want to move layers up and down, you can use the arrows. And then you have here the duplicate. So now I created a duplicate and I want to bring this up. So you can see now it's overriding everything again. And you can also merge down with this little button, just as we saw before. And you can add a mask also from here and delete. So these buttons will give you access to these really basic functions of the layers. Now you can see that this one is fully opaque. So let's play again with the blending modes. Now you also have legacy blending modes. So not only default, but also legacy. And again, you start with one. So you can click this and start, for example, with this. And then you press the arrow key to go down and see all the different blending modes. So you can see how many effects we can get with this. We can play a lot until we find something that we really like. So let's say that I like this effect, but I want to drop down the opacity a little bit. Okay, and then I can continue. Now, also when you use white layers like this or black layers, you will have a lot of different effects when you use the blending modes. So let's use the white and see what's going to happen. So you can see that, there you go, it's giving me other interesting results like this one here, which is kind of inverted, and this one here, which is total black and white, and also this one here looks really interesting. So it's just a matter of playing around and finding the correct combination until you reach what you were looking for. Now another thing we can do with the layer is do new from visible. We skip this one here because well, this is going to turn everything you see into one single layer. So it's kind of, you know, the fusion of everything you've done so far. So you can, you know, place it here in a separate layer, and perhaps you can work with some color correction. Let me just zoom a little bit more. So you can see with just few images here, some basic layer, how many things we can do, how many effects. I want to just create another one. I want to create a black. So now the black is here, is the background color. So I'm going to use a new layer with the background color, and again run another time all the blending layers. So select, press the arrow keys, and see what's going to happen here with the total black. See this one here? It's completely different. Overlay and exclusion. There you go. Okay. So let's say that I like this effect right here. So this black and white effect. Now, if I use a mask on this, I'm going to create a mask from here. And I want to start with a full transparency. Okay, so it's total black. And now if I paint with the white, I can turn some of these into black and white. Because what I'm doing is actually using, I'm going to increase the size a little bit, is I'm using this layer right here to guide the black and white effect. So again, these are all different things we can do here with the layers. and masks. So I'm gonna stop for this lesson. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel to stay updated and to see other lessons. And if you want to support us, if you want to thank us, you can join as a supporter. So thanks for watching and see you in the next lesson.